Hello, you guys, and welcome back. Today, oh my gosh, you are in for a treat. Keren is one of my newer connections that I've made just in 2024. And I don't know her, or I should say, I didn't know her very well before that. And this episode was really probably the most time that I've spent with her. And I have to tell you, I'm in love. She is incredible. I knew she was up to something amazing when I was tagged in her page for her business, Not Your Father's Lawyer, which I'll talk about in a minute, because of our rebrand for Not Your Dad's CPA. Someone was like, you two should know each other. And that's how I got to know Keren. We talk about that a little bit more in the episode. But I had no idea how much I truly, truly would love and admire Keren until after I recorded this episode. So here's what you need to know. Not Your Father's Lawyer was born from a desire to fill the legal gap for small businesses by replacing the outdated billable hour model with flat fee pricing. Ring a bell, you guys? With 15 years of experience in corporate transactions, Keren has worked with every type of business, from side hustlers to raising millions of dollars and taking companies public, which if you don't know what that means, that is a big freaking deal. Today, she helps small business owners get the legal aspects of their business in check through her law firm, Not Your Father's Lawyer, offering one-on-one legal support, legal contract templates, tailored specifically to small niches, and legal membership services for general counsel support at a fraction of the cost. She resides in Orange County, California, with her husband and 2 children. You guys, Keren and the Profitability Project are a match made in heaven. If you've ever had questions about setting up your business or contract templates or anything along those lines, go check out Not Your Father's Lawyer. Check out their website. They literally have so many templates. And if you're still not sure, Keren does free discovery calls and you need to meet her. Even if you don't need her services, I just need you to go meet her. So stay with us as we talk to Keren about all the legal needs and desires for small business owners and how they can help you become more profitable. Welcome to the Profitability Podcast. I'm Joey.
And I'm Mackenzie.
Join us as we explore success in business and life, proving that while finance may not feel sexy, profitability is. Welcome to the Profitability Podcast. I'm so sorry. Just got a little distracted there. Keren, so happy to have you here. And we can't wait to introduce you to our audience. Today's episode is our February phenomena. And today we are highlighting Keren, who is based out of California. And she is a lawyer and owns business. I guess a law firm. Is that the technical term?
That is, yeah.
Okay. Okay. With our industry, you can be an accounting firm or a CPA firm, and they are very different. So I want to make sure I have it right. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself here. But like I said, well, initially I heard about you when we kind of rebranded the Profitability Project as Not Your Dad's CPA. And our mutual friend, Crystal Beck, the owner of Comma Copywriters, said, you absolutely need to know Not Your Father's Lawyer, same vein, Keren. And then we were on the High Five grant together. And so we kind of got to know each other a little bit better there. So Keren, tell us about you. Tell us about your business, like all the things we want to know.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm Keren de Zwart. Yes, I run a law firm called Not Your Father's Lawyer. It's a business law firm that's geared toward small business owners. And I work with everybody, but I'm really passionate in particular about working with female business owners. So I've been practicing business and corporate law for 15 years now. I started in a traditional law firm. And, if you've ever worked with a lawyer or if you're familiar with kind of how it works, the law firm kind of takes a retainer of a few $1,000s up front. And then they have this like list of hourly fees, and they charge you, like the partners are charged at $700 an hour and the associates are charged at this. And it goes all the way down to the secretaries. And then they charge you like 10 cents a copy and this and that. And what I saw, and I came out of law school in 2009, which was, kind of at the height of this economic downturn post housing crisis, and the it was not good for small businesses, really. So what I saw in the years that I was working in this firm is the smallest businesses especially really found it hard to work with the lawyer at all. People, it shouldn't be this way, but when people are trying to tighten business budgets, sometimes the professional services are like, nah, I'll do that by myself or I'll figure it out. And especially when you get you have a question for a lawyer and you call your lawyer or you send an email and they send an email back and it's like, quick, okay, great, I got my answer. But then like a week later, you get a bill for like $192.50. And people kind of are like, what? And so what you saw is people starting to kind of take matters into their own hands, like, oh, I'll figure it out myself, or I'll Google it, or I just will kind of like close my eyes and cover my ears and hope that everything's fine. And I thought there has to be a better way. And especially in the transactional world, I'm not a litigator, I'm not in court. That's still harder to create certainty in the work that you do. But the kind of work that I do, forming entities, reviewing or writing contracts, filing trademarks, helping people exit their business, you do it over and over and over again. There's fairly a good amount of certainty in the process. So I started thinking, we could do this flat fee. Like you could do so much of this flat fee. And I went to the managing partner and I said, hey, what about offering some of these services on a flat fee basis? There's this little company that people hadn't totally heard of called LegalZoom. They're doing something similar, but they're not lawyers, it's just kind of a platform. And he was like, nobody's going to use that. Real companies won't use that. And that's not how people want their law delivered. And I kind of was like, I disagree. So I was the only female attorney in the practice. I spent quite a bit of time helping them build up their business. I'm not a website designer. I have no like technical skills, but I built their website from scratch. I created a LinkedIn presence. I started a newsletter campaign. I created like a Twitter account, all these things that, to try to help bring the firm into the 21st century, but also to kind of make sure that I had a job in this difficult market, to bring in business. And it worked. And I brought in repeat business because people are like, oh, thanks so much for sending that email. That reminds me, can we file this trademark or, whatever. But it wasn't appreciated. And it kind of just became a thing that I did on top of my billable hours for no extra money, for no appreciation. So I started a blog called Not Your Father's Lawyer, which was kind of intended. What I really cared about is trying to take kind of the paywall out of the legal business. It's like, here is just information. Because a lot of people, when they start a business, they're like, I don't even know where to start. How do I even know what to do? And so the idea was to create like an approachable, if not a little cheeky, way to present information for small business owners to provide them some support while they are starting and running their business, and a kind of a place that you knew that somebody knew what they were doing and providing that information without creating a relationship with an attorney. So I did that kind of on the side for fun because I was passionate about it. And then my career kind of took a little bit of a zigzaggy path, which we could talk about. But in that process, what was literally just a blog, an informational kind of passion project turned into a business, truthfully on accident, which is friends, family, friends of friends, friends of family started coming to me. I read your article. Can you help me with this? My friend needs a entity form. Can you help them? And I ended up building an entire business on the side of my like full-time corporate career. So I eventually left, which was not until 2019 that I left the corporate world full-time and did this as the actual full-time business that I run today.
That's kind of hysterical because that's exactly what happened to us. So we get it. But talk to me a little bit more about, okay, so, you've created this and started it as a blog and, it was kind of this one thing and now it's something obviously completely different. Talk to me about what it looks like now.
Yeah. So today it's kind of a full well, mostly full. I guess I'm always kind of coming up with new ways to offer products and services that help people, but it's all of the visions that I had kind of even from as a young attorney and all of the years of working with thousands of clients and kind of understanding their needs is kind of providing those products and services. So of course, one-on-one as a lawyer, I'm still that, but everything I do is flat fee. So everything is project-based. Whatever you need, I should say not everything, a handful of some things I sometimes do hourly, but I don't like it as much as I don't want my client to have to do it. So 99.9% of what I do is flat fee, project-based work, anything to do with basically starting and running a business, intellectual property protection, contracts, entity formation. I do still do some. I was a corporate and securities attorney. So in the old school version of my life, of my attorney life, I took companies public and raised millions of dollars in private offerings. Most of that I refer out now to other colleagues because it's just a highly technical and very time consuming aspect of what I do. But I will still do. I just did a couple at the end of this year for closing some, asset sales or small stock purchase agreements. So sometimes if people are just selling their business for $200,000 or $500,000, and it's a straightforward process, and I still help with those. Or I can advise people and support them kind of in a consulting capacity when they're working with, another attorney. And I have template legal contracts. They're built to be very niche for people's specific business because there's a lot of bad stuff on the internet. Like when it comes to legal contracts, there is no rule that lawyers have to write what is provided and sold online, right? So you can go and Google like, oh, I'm a graphic designer. I want like a client agreement. And it might even say it's a graphic designer agreement, but there is just no knowing where it came from or whether it's valid. And even when they're good, it's hard because it's not always easy for a business owner to know, does this fit my services? Does this fit my operations? So what I've tried to do is be kind of a stopgap for people. Obviously, the ideal is always to work with a lawyer and get exactly what you need and have something built specifically and custom for your business. But obviously that costs more. So what I've created over the years are these kind of niche templates. So for example, any service provider, you can, a graphic designer can, we can search like a client service agreement. And in theory, we could all use it. But obviously what an accounting firm does, what a lawyer does, what a graphic designer does, what a business coach does, we're all servicing a client through a client service agreement, but it's going to look very different. So the idea is that they're kind of niched down templates that are built for particular industries, the ones that I work with the most, but we're always adding them to create something that is a legal template. It is an attorney drafted template. It's built to help you understand what you're even putting out there. Because another thing is that obviously there's a lot of legalese in contracts and nobody knows what it is. And then sometimes you might have a contract and then your client is like, well, what does this mean? And you're like, I don't know. It just says indemnification. I got it online, And so trying to write the contracts in lay terms so that everybody understands what's in it, why it's there. And that's obviously kind of like the secondary piece was the education part. And that's where this legal membership services came from, which when you think about it, is a little bit like having a part-time general counsel on your team. So having somebody that you can ask questions to, office hours. We do like monthly webinars about relevant topics, either that are timely, like there's the BOI report is one that I'm just like pulling my hair out right now because like it's required, it's not required, it's required, it's not required every day.
Oh my gosh.
So
literally, yeah.
But those changes, the FTC rules about like how people can market and advertise their companies online are always changing. So trying to create educational content for people so that they can understand that. So that's kind of the three pieces, the one-on-one legal services, the templates, and then these membership services for people who want a little bit more hand-holding in their business or a little bit more access to to kind of a constant stream of legal information for their business.
I love it so much. Such a fantastic model that you've built. And it's worth pointing out, I think, that you were so ahead of the game. I think. I mean, I just feel like, because, like I said, our story is similar. Had a corporate job, had no intentions of leaving the corporate job, and then on the side had people asking if I could help. It seemed like mine lined up with COVID. When COVID hit, then more small businesses were getting created, and so that's kind of when I started getting in demand. And then all of a sudden I looked in the mirror and was like, am I going to quit my job? Am I doing this? Like, it's time, I think. And since then, in the last now 5 years since COVID, that's crazy. Small business has just gotten out of control. I mean, it's just wild. And so for you to have this idea and then build it out enough to completely make it your career before COVID even was a factor, that's like visionary. I mean, I don't know if anyone's told you
just
that,
luck
but I think
and
it
good
is.
timing. I think maybe,
I don't know
sometimes you
about
have to
that.
call it. I remember there's like the saying of, it's like success is the intersection of like luck and preparedness and opportunity kind of all colliding. And so, I mean, I appreciate the credit, but I do think a little bit was just good timing. And it's funny that you say that, because I actually had like it was like a movie moment where I'm like sitting with my husband and we're talking. I mean, I was working like 100 hours a week because I was like doing my full-time senior director corporate job and this, and my husband travels for work, and I had 2 little kids. And we were like, this isn't working. And I was like, at the same time that I was like, I should quit the side hustle. He was like, well, it's obviously that it's time to quit your full-time job and pursue this. We like said it at each other. And I was like, wait, what? I'm a corporate ladder climber. What do you mean? And so it is. And I'm really big on, I am not, if you listen to like these podcasts with like these visionary entrepreneurs and are like, take the leap and just do it. And that is not who I am. I am extremely risk averse. I set out an 18-month plan before I quit my job. And then I gave myself an 18-month runway of what my financial goals were in the business to confirm that that was going to work for me. And I think that in the interest of transparency, it's so important, because this story is not whole if you don't also acknowledge that I had a partner with an income that could support us. So that is
Totally.
I see people all the time that have great ideas, and they don't have the same privilege of having more flexibility on the financial side, or they just haven't thought through, and then they've got this great business, but after 3 months they're like, oh, I got to go get a full-time job, because they didn't give themselves the runway that they needed, because it takes time to build a business. And honestly, I beat my projections by an entire year. Within 6 months, I was already exceeding my corporate income, which in some ways is kind of a duh. I had like such a funny moment when I was putting in my notice at my corporate job, and I was doing like my exit thing, and they were like, okay, you have, the PTO, you have like X times the PTO at blank dollars an hour. And I was like, that's all I make, like, as like what I actually get versus what you bring into the business is so different than when it's like your own business and the bottom line is you. And I was like, oh, this actually might be easier for me to achieve than I thought it would. And so, but I do think, and this is where I'm like, I always tell people, I'm like, I don't want people to choose between a lawyer or an accountant when they're starting a business. But I tell my clients all the time, if there's only money for one, start with the accountant, because there is so much value. Obviously, there's so many tax savings opportunities when you work with somebody who kind of knows this crazy system that we have for businesses, especially. But then also to be able to like look at some of those projections and see what's realistic, and to understand your numbers and be able to make those plans accordingly. Because it's a shame, and this is where I'm super, super passionate about women business owners in particular, is that the numbers are staggeringly sad still about the number of women-owned businesses that make under 6 figures, the number of women-owned businesses that survive after 5 years. And so any chance to kind of share the transparency of my story, that's why I think it's so important that it is successful, but I had kind of this backup plan that was that made it easier for me to take those risks. And that's a really important piece of my story that I don't want to pretend like it's not there.
Well, I love that because I think, like you said, there's so much, especially when we picture entrepreneurship in our head, whether it was according to plan or not. It's like, I have to jump. I have to make the leap. I have to trust my, and in reality, I was never going to quit my corporate job, period. But especially if it wasn't competing money wise. Like we had to be a 2-income household, that we always have been. And so there was no way I'm just going to quit something to start something brand new. Not that you can't do that, but I like that we're kind of acknowledging that doesn't have to be the only way to entrepreneurship. You can have a very low risk way to go for it and to still start something
and I'm
of your own.
so passionate about this because the kind of poster child for entrepreneurship is that visionary that's like running off the edge of the cliff, or the Harvard dropout that mortgages his house to, start the new app or whatever. And that is not the norm, right? Those are really the anomalies. And it is also, like, in my opinion, just as sexy for people to be like really to know their numbers and to have everything in order and have a plan and to make and to kind of, and you can adjust. Obviously, like if there's one thing we all learn as business owners, that a plan means absolutely nothing. And so
yes,
I actually think I learned that first as becoming a mother, and then have had to apply it into my life as a business owner too, which is hard for super type A planner. But you can still have a guideline and then kind of zigzag in and out of your guideline.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because, if you want to be the entrepreneur that runs off the cliff or drops out of school, don't talk to your accountant or your lawyer.
It's probably
we're
true.
Not those people.
We are not going to be the ones supporting that.
We're all probably the risk-averse people. Yeah, we're relatively conservative. Maybe because we're type A. Becca's not. Kenzie and I are oldest daughters. Like, we talk about that kind of stereotype. We fall right into that really well.
So I probably would have been like the visionary entrepreneur, but I am not that person.
We're not the people to talk to inspire you to jump off the cliff. Although I will say, I'm somewhat like this much fractionally a little bit more, or I guess less conservative than my other financial counterparts in the industry. I find that I'm less conservative than most, but I say that knowing that everyone in the financial industry is extremely conservative. So I don't know if you feel the same, but
yeah, I think that I say that I am a business owner first and a lawyer second. So the way I approach, especially I saw this in the kind of old school corporate and securities world where it's like lawyers kill deals over the stupidest things that are like, this is so remote, it's never going to be, like, let's be realistic. And listen, the Google lawyers that are paid astronomical fees to deal with billion-dollar deals or hundreds of millions of dollars, there's a place for that, and there will always be a place for that. But me fighting another lawyer over narrowing a scope of some remote indemnification or whatever on like a $3,000 coaching contract, that's absurd. And so that's the same way I go is, yeah, could we draft you a 42-page coaching agreement? Sure, we could. And it'll be the best coaching agreement that's ever been written. But if you can't sign a single client because they all get scared off by your contract, guess what? That is the most worthless contract that's ever been written. And so for me, it's really about finding a balance of what is necessary to protect the parties and what is acceptable to let this business operate in a reasonable way.
I love what you said, business owner first, lawyer second, because that is what makes you not your father's lawyer, I think. And I feel the same way, is understanding business owner to business owner and what is absolutely important and what is that moment of, yeah, we just need to recognize that this is entrepreneurship and it's messy and it's not, whatever the case might be. So that's a great way to put it. Business owner first, lawyer second.
As women, life demands a lot from us, but there is no reason for you to put your business goals on hold. At the Profitability Project, we understand that your business can't be your whole life. Balancing personal life and work is always hard, and we want to help you make the most of every day. We are here to craft financial strategies to help you achieve the lifestyle you want. With options ranging from online courses to done-for-you services, you'll discover new ways to maximize profitability, streamline your operations, and take the guesswork out of taxes. We have what you need to take your business to the next level. Interested? Learn more about the Profitability Project at theprofitabilityproject.com. That's theprofitabilityproject.com. Get ready to grow your business without sacrificing your entire life.
I want to just really quickly talk about the overlap between our two departments because they are so interconnected. You mentioned LegalZoom earlier, and it's tax time for us right now. We're in the thick of it. And you said, I think they should get an accountant first, a lawyer second. I think they should get their business registered with a lawyer. And then maybe we can talk about, working with an accountant and then bring a lawyer in, because the amount of confusion and frustration among small business owners, especially, that we see come across our desk. I mean, right now I'm getting 4, 5, 6 people a day who don't understand not just taxes, and, we can help and educate and obviously file on their behalf, but they come to me and they say, I have an LLC. I'm good. Here you go. And I'm like, actually, an LLC is a legal structure that can be taxed as a million different things.
Yeah.
And explaining that, and then diving in and finding I had somebody recently who came to me and said, I've got 4 LLCs, so just a personal return. And I'm like, great. And then we look them up and they're all 4 taxed as S corps. And I'm like, not ideal, right?
Yes.
So talk to us really quickly about some of the biggest benefits of having you on and available to help, even from literally minute 1 business registration.
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. So I see a number of things, and I will snark a little bit on the accounting industry, because how many people are like, yeah, my accountant formed my LLC. And I was like, no, they didn't. What they did is file a document with the state, and that's all. And I know they didn't do everything else, because then they're probably engaging in the unauthorized practice of law if they did. But forming an LLC, as in filing, and a lot of states, California even included, Delaware, these most common places have these straight up 1-pagers, fill in the blank 3 things and form the LLC. And it is a live, active LLC. But that's just step 1 in a process. So I always tell people, and without getting too far in the weeds, if you want to form an entity, and this is true of an LLC or a corporation, but I'm going to speak specifically about LLCs because corporations have a lot more formalities anyway. If you form an LLC, even if you are the only owner, as a lawyer, I always say you still should have an operating agreement. You need organizational minutes. Obviously, you need to get an EIN. I see people all the time screw up because they operated as a sole proprietor with their EIN, and then they or LegalZoom or somebody forms their LLC, but then they're using the EIN with the LLC and it's not the correct thing. And it can really screw up the accounting side. Obviously, it can result in fees and penalties and, all kinds of things. And so having everything set up properly is so important. And from the legal side, the reason that the accounting matters so much is that most people choose to form an LLC for tax reasons, which is, especially with the S Corp, when you can create some real tax advantages if you're starting to generate real income, but also for legal purposes to create limited liability for the owner, so that if the business gets sued and you don't have to pay anything personally out of your personal bank accounts or your personal investments. But in order to actually have that limited personal liability, you have to operate your entity correctly. And the number one way to not operate your entity correctly and to create personal liability is to mess up the money part. And so the most common things I see are, like we said, kind of the using like a sole prop EIN, thinking it's like for the LLC, having money just come straight into your personal bank account. That's for an LLC. My absolute favorite, which people hate when I say this, is using your personal Zelle, Venmo, PayPal accounts. But I move it into my bank account. Absolutely not. Every single one of those platforms allows you to set up a bank, like a business account. And people are like, but then it takes fees. Yeah, it's the cost of doing business. But guess what? This is what gives you that limited personal liability. So understanding that up front, having all the documentation that creates that layer of formality so that you could stand in front of a court if you needed to and say, Your Honor, look, I formed my LLC. Here's my operating agreement. Here's my annual minutes. This is how I operate. All of my stuff goes here. And that they can say, you're right, and you are not liable for the, business liabilities. And it's a big deal. And it is one of those things that you kind of go like, how likely is that? How likely is my business going to get sued at all? And if it does, how likely is it that they're going to go after me personally? Well, I will say, how likely is it that your business is going to get sued? Depends what you're doing, what kind of business. A baby food brand, more likely than a, online business coach. But how likely is it that they might try to include the owners in a lawsuit? Very, very likely, even if they're not successful. So having those formalities and understanding them up front. The other thing I see all the time is maybe you did get it formed. I mean, LegalZoom does. If you form like an LLC, they will give you an operating agreement and all that. And it's a skeleton document, but if you're a single owner, it is good enough. I tell people that all the time. It's a good enough. But then they're not a lawyer. They're not reminding you. They don't tell you if you need a business license in your city or county. They don't remind you your annual reports need to be filed with the state. So a lot of entities, you might see this too, when people are like, yeah, I have an LLC, but then you look it up and it's like, well, it's been suspended by the Franchise Tax Board for failing to file your annual report. And again, that is, from a legal perspective, bad because that can create personal liability. In a lot of states, it can create voidable contracts. So if you have an entity that was suspended, the contracts that were signed during that time can be voided by the, other parties. And so they are a big deal. And so the reason that working with an attorney up front is that you can understand what those are, especially in the world of like online business. Not every area requires a business license. Some cities or counties do. They say every single business that operates, whether it's online or remote, you need to file for a business license. Some only require business licenses for certain things. Some of this you can, like if somebody's not afraid of doing the research, you can do it yourself. You can Google like, I'm in Orange County, California. You could Google like Orange County business license. It's actually, we're such a big place. It's city by city here, but you can start at the county level. Some business licenses are at the state level, like Nevada they do a business license at the state level. So all of these things are nuances that you don't get if you either work with nobody or work with a legal platform. And I think that's what people really need to know. And LegalZoom, for all of its flaws, is a good stopgap, right? It is a good gap bridger for people who would otherwise have just done it absolutely wrong by themselves. But I have many dozens of clients with contracts, entity formations, and especially trademarks that are done through those types of platforms incorrectly because it is not a lawyer or even a paralegal like taking in the information and analyzing it. It's just literally transcribing whatever you put in onto the documents. So corporations, for example, many people don't know this, but if you form a corporation, you actually have to issue shares for it to be like a validly formed entity. And people don't, it's not as big a deal in small businesses, but you're not supposed to issue all the shares that are authorized. So a company might have like 1 million authorized shares, and you can issue 10 shares, 100 shares, 100,000 shares. Because if you ever want to issue more shares and you have issued all the authorized shares, you have to file a certificate of amendment, or you might have to do a stock split and all this complex stuff. So little things like that people get wrong because they don't know, because they're just filling out the form on the legal platform that said like, how many authorized, 1,000, how many issued. And then that is just literally filling out a form for them. And so those are the reasons that it gets messed up a lot because it's little do you know, but you were actually just the person putting in the information and nobody's deciphering it or telling you it's right or wrong.
Well, and that's actually true on our side of things too. Technically, anybody, anywhere could file taxes on your behalf by just filling out the form if they have certain codes from the IRS, to keep it simple, that says that they're the person doing this. They do not have to have a CPA license. And that's all fine and good. Like you said, it's a great bridge gap if that's what you can afford. And, they probably have a little more experience than the average business owner. So fine, but definitely don't ask them tax advice. They legally can't give it to you. And they're just taking what you gave them and putting it on a form and then submitting it. So if you screw up or have, issues on your side of things, that's on you. That's too bad. There's no double check by an expert. It's just pushing it through. And I, in fact, had a client, potential client this week who had a business for 2 years. They opened in 2022. By the end of 2024, they had bank accounts, they had credit cards, and he's like, I don't know, I used LegalZoom and they messed it up somehow. I've never had an EIN.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like,
how did they
I don't even understand
open?
how that's possible. And he's like, I think they used my social security number. I don't know. And I'm like, and there were partners. It's bad. It's really bad. And the amount of legwork that we have to do to go figure it out, I'm telling you, if he had just paid someone, a lawyer, to file it right the first time, he would have saved so much money. I mean, so much money. And that's just for my bill.
Yeah, that's the tricky part that is hard for people to swallow sometimes. And the truth is that it could be that 7 out of 10 times it's done correctly. And so 7 people, saved a few $100 or a few $1,000. But when it's wrong, it's very costly to unwind. This happened to me several times this year with people who came to me who tried to do either entity format. What they wanted to do was to foreign qualify their entity. So when you do business in other states, you have to foreign register. And I don't want to freak everybody out. It doesn't mean just because you have a client in another state or anything. People are like, wait, what? I have to register in every state. But if you have a quote unquote presence in a different state, so if you have employees there or a physical presence, or if you are doing a certain amount of business in states, then you have to foreign qualify that business. So if you have a California LLC, but you hired an employee in wherever, Arkansas, now you have to foreign qualify the California LLC in Arkansas. Well, this client had a bunch of employees and businesses, and they literally formed a new LLC in 5 different states. And so we had to go dissolve all these LLCs and then foreign qualify them. And a lot of it is you can't have the same name. So you have to dissolve the LLC first and then foreign qualify. And then some states have penalties if you don't foreign qualify before you start doing business there. So then you have to pay these penalties. And the time, right? The time that it takes a professional to figure out everything, collect all the information, unwind it, the filing fees alone, every state has, and some of them are high, like Delaware's, dissolution filing fees are a few $100s, whereas California is $5. And so, the cost of unwinding things is alone usually worth the expenditure up front to get it right. But also sometimes things get screwed up and they can't be unwound. And you have to either just dissolve the entity, liquidate the assets, and start all over. Or worse, you can have legal liability for things that you didn't realize you were creating for yourself. So it is and I'm really big on not trying to scare people into working with professionals. These are definitely worst case scenarios, but this is imperative to understand if you're going to be a business owner. And one thing I will say, because I have lots of business owners that are single member LLCs, it's just them. It's easier to unwind something that was screwed up and it's just me, myself, and I is the only owner. When you have multiple business owners, and I don't care if it's your spouse or your cousin or your neighbor or your best friend, if there is more than one business owner, this is where I just go, don't start the business if you're not willing to invest in the legal and accounting professionals up front, because too often we see the ramifications of, an operating agreement that wasn't properly written, or again, those skeleton agreements, and then one partner is not pulling their weight, or it's not even clear. Can they transfer their interest? They want to sell it. One person just wants to get their paycheck and do nothing. And they're like, how do I get out of this? And those can become very, very messy. Especially, honestly, I say this is true. I don't care if you're strangers or your family, but honestly, it's even more true when it's family or friends, that it should all be in writing up front.
Agreed 100%. We see that all the time of, well, I want, from the accounting side, well, we want to sell it and let's do evaluation and we're kind of down this path, whatever. And it got messy real fast. There's a reason they say don't go into business with your family and your friends. 9 times out of 10.
And if you do, just make sure that everything is really tight up front about what everybody's expectations are. Have it in writing, right? So an example of those valuations, I see them all the time, that they say, we're not going to argue about it when we get there. This is what we've decided. We're going to have, 2 independent appraisers who are going to pick a third independent appraiser, and that independent appraiser is that's going to be the decision, and we have X days to execute, and this is, and whatever, if the buyout is more than X number of dollars, then it's going to be paid in a 3-year note, whatever that is, because people don't really think about it. But if somebody wants out of a business and the valuation says the business is even worth $500,000 and somebody has a 50% interest, you're like, well, I don't have $250,000 to give. How do I do this? And this is where businesses kind of fall apart and end up having to get dissolved and liquidated. And then nobody wins because it wasn't, considered up front. And you don't have to know exactly where this is going to be or what it's going to be worth. The idea is just settling the process. It's like a prenup for a business, right? Is that we don't know exactly what assets we're going to have, in 15 years if we get divorced. It's just, we need to know what the process is to resolve the separation, and having that up front is very important. And not even just, it doesn't have to be, it can be amicable and still be complex, because like we said, the business doesn't have the cash to pay out, and how do you agree on an interest rate if it's in a promissory note and all of that. So those are things that are figure outable up front.
I love that. Yeah, it gets messy real fast. And we see a lot of times, especially in tax season, people come to us and they have so much shame and embarrassment. And it seems like everybody I talk to comes to me, but maybe that's because I work with small business owners, or maybe not, but they come to me. They're like, I'm so sorry. It's so bad. Don't judge me. Oh, or I ask them questions and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. I don't know what that means or whatever. And we're really big on, and this is where our not your dad's CPA came from, is we were so sick of hearing and experiencing sending clients to these CPAs that were so reputable and whatever. And then these CPAs talk down to them. They are rude. They are, oh, how dare you be in business and not know this? I'm sorry, but I work with CPAs. They know nothing about anything except for maybe something about accounting. But most often they suck at business ownership. Okay. It's just so lame. So I agree, as far as trying not to scare people, there are a million things that could go wrong for sure, which is why you and I have businesses and we exist. Oh, I froze. I was on my rant. I was going.
No, well, I 100% agree. And it's funny that you say that, because that's exactly where the brand came from. My brand, Now Your Father's Lawyer, which is, and with all due respect, he's a brilliant attorney, but this did come, I did name this after my father's lawyer. Super condescending. I remember him yelling at a client and calling him an asshole and hanging up on him. Excuse my language. Sorry. Before we blew that out.
No. You're fine. That's not what I meant.
I did so well. Calling him a not nice name and hanging up on the client. And it was exactly that it's what I always tell people is you don't have a law degree. You don't have a degree in accounting. It's not your job to know all of these nuances. I literally work with, I overlap accounting so much. And I like, when I get my tax return stuff from my accountant, I'm like, girl, I don't know what I'm looking at, like, so being willing to say exactly that. There is no shame. And in fact, when it comes to like working to change these, it kind of goes full circle of like changing these statistics about especially women in business, you have to remove the shame. There is nothing shameful about going to get support from people who know what they're doing. My dad was an entrepreneur, definitely more like the visionary jump off the cliff kind, which is so funny because I'm like, oh, how do you do that? But he was a co-founder in a business that was very successful and went public. And one of the things that he always says, which has stuck with me my whole life, even when I like never thought I would be a business owner myself, was that he said like the most successful people in life just surround themselves with people who know more than them. And I think that having that humility of saying like, and I say this to my clients all the time, because lawyers are like this, and I'm sure accountants are kind of the reason that the condescension happens, I think, is because they know so much about the technical legal or the technical tax and accounting pieces. But what they are not is an expert in the client's business. So when I say, here's what I can share with you from the legal side, but we're going to fit that into your expertise, because I am not an expert in graphic design. I'm not an expert in business coaching. I'm not an expert in an accounting firm or any of the many, many, many dozens of different types of businesses my clients run. And so my job isn't to tell you how to run your business. My job is to hear how you run your business and help you fill in the gaps and guide you where the legal pieces can impact your business. And I think that that's what really aligns these two businesses, Not Your Father's Lawyer and the Profitability Project, is that they are focused on the same, which is education and understanding and being comfortable to ask questions. That is always the right angle for a business owner to take.
And it's too bad because any business owner ever, whether you're the most successful CPA or the most successful lawyer or the most successful anything, had at one point and continues to have gaps in their knowledge. They are not also the most successful marketer or salesperson or whatever, like you talked about. And there's a reason that we all have, our different skills and talents. And I actually benefit from people not being experts in accounting. So when they come to me and say, I'm so sorry, I'm not an expert in accounting, I'm like, you're doing me a favor because now I get to have a business. So, that's such a backwards and old school way of doing it. For whatever reason, legal and accounting are notorious for being kind of condescending, but
I still think it's very true of kind of the mainstream firms. And again, there's a place for that. There is a market for that in these kind of big corporate public company, right? Like the public companies still need a dry auditor that just is going to just tell them the numbers, whatever. But the industries are shifting. And I always say this, like, obviously you want a lawyer or an accountant who knows what they're talking about, but you can vibe with your lawyer too. Like, I don't want somebody to come with me and be like, well, she came highly recommended, but I didn't really like her. Like, then don't work with me, work with somebody that you want to pick up the phone and talk to, that you feel like they understand your business, that you feel like they respect the questions you have and the business you're running. Because honestly, especially when it comes to lawyers, like, we're a dime a dozen. So if you don't like me, you can definitely find somebody else. And so don't feel like you can't have somebody that you would like. I'd go out to dinner with my accountant. That you actually can find people like that. And there are more and more of them, especially in the online world. You can definitely, I've met so many other attorneys, even that are like totally competitive to me. And we share clients and refer each other clients, because this is about, we care at the end of the day about having the clients be served in the best way possible. And if I know that somebody's like, oh, I know that I do the exact same thing that this lawyer does, but she is going to they're going to get along so well. They have whatever, a niche that I think that they'd love, that I know that I'm serving my would-be clients better, knowing that they're set up with exactly what they need.
Well, and doesn't that make your job so much more fun and feasible as well? Like, I know the clients that I see them on my calendar and I go, yes, these are my favorite days, And when I get off the phone with them, I feel on top of the world about my own business, about their business. I'm excited. I'm, having a great time. And that's the fact that I get
Who
to do
knew that could
for a
exist
job.
in these industries?
Who knew that I could talk to people I really want to talk to? And to your point, there are lawyers and accountants that would go to dinner with you and would enjoy that. And it doesn't have to be, all these things. So, Kenzie, what were you saying while I was out?
I think all I was going to say is like, that's kind of how we started our foundation at the Profitability Project is like, we don't want you to know everything about accounting. We don't expect you to know. We want you to be able to do the things that you love, whether that's marketing or, running a dress business or whatever it is. Like, we want you to be able to go and do that and have fun and enjoy what you're doing, and we'll handle the accounting side of it. And then like, we'll teach you what you need to know and we'll take care of it. And that's just kind of like been our whole model since we started this business is like, we don't expect you to know everything. And I just think that there's so many people in the industry now that are that way, that are like, hey, you aren't supposed to know everything about all the legal things or all the accounting things. So like, come and use us. And I can guarantee that like the money will be well spent. It will be so well spent because then you don't have to worry about your finances. You've got someone handling it. You don't have to stress about it. And then on the legal side of things too, like just hearing people like setting up LLCs in every state, like that is crazy to me. Like that just sounds like my worst nightmare. Like, like when you wake up from a nightmare and like a cold sweat, like you're like, okay, that was terrible. But like, it seems like that, like it's worth the investment to pay someone to help you with this so that down the road, you're not having to pay thousands of dollars in fees and things to have someone clean it up for you.
Love it. And we talk, one of the quotes, I guess, we reference a lot. It's actually a proverb, but we say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. And when people come to me, I use that in all kinds of different ways, but when people come to me and they're like, it's a mess. It's been 4 years. I've been in business X number, for so long. And I just feel like it's time. I'm so sorry. And it's like, yeah, would it have maybe been a little bit easier from day one? Sure. But, oh, well, at least you're coming now and didn't wait another 20 years. So if you're feeling maybe a little anxiety about the legal or the finance side as a business owner, it's okay. Just start now. It's all good. We're here. It's no big deal. It does not have to be shameful. It can be fun, actually, to feel all of that piece of it's taken care of. It's done right. I don't have to worry. And better now than never. So,
well, one of my favorite parts of our podcast is hearing our guests' biggest failures. I know that sounds weird, but I feel like I learned the most from this. And it's just so awesome to see how even your lowest of lows you can come out of. So if you don't mind, I would love to hear your biggest failure.
I have one that's pretty raw. And I will preface this with, and we've already established that I'm extremely type A. I was like the straight A student, I like still have nightmares. I'm, 15 years out of law school, like 19 years out of college, and Lord knows what out of, K-12. And I still have like nightmares about like going to take a final and I didn't read the book or like can't remember my locker combo. And I'm like, that has never happened to me in real life. Why am I having these recurring dreams? And so perfectionism is not an ideal character trait as a business owner. And I'm learning to kind of work with it, but it has been an interesting, failure wasn't really a thing that I was familiar with because I was and I'm really extrinsically motivated. So it's actually been really funny as a business owner because there's nobody to like, attaboy, Keren, and I'm like, somebody give me praise,
You call me next time, okay? Because I will. I got you. But okay, yeah, continue.
Shout out, by the way, to Crystal Beck from Comma because she is like my biggest cheerleader, and we do share we have like big financial, conversations and stuff. So She is. I did find somebody that could attaboy me outside of the corporate world. But
Yes.
the preface to that about like, I've never been fired from a job. I've never like gotten, in trouble at school. And so like anything that's like not exactly how I planned is failure to me. But I had what I would consider a wild failure, which is I initially wanted to build my template shop separate from Not Your Father's Lawyer for two reasons. One is NYFL is what I call it for short. NYFL is a services-based business. It's a legal business. There's a little bit of legal gray area about like the templates that are not a lawyer and attorney-client relationship versus like the actual attorney-client relationship. And I thought like, this is cleaner to do separately. I will build this. So I initially had like 10 or 12 templates that I built on the Not Your Father's Lawyer platform. And I never marketed them. I certainly never used ads or any paid ads or anything. I never really talked about them. And I would sell like a few a month, just mostly from existing clients that knew I had it, or people who would come to me and be like, I need this. I'm like, oh, well, you can do it custom, but I also have this. So I was like, I'm going to build this out on a separate brand so that it could be like more scalable and then not tied to me. Cause like so much of and I built it this way on purpose, Not Your Father's Lawyer. Like I am who people want. And I was like, I'm going to build this separately.
Yeah.
And it was a very hefty investment. I invested in somebody to build the website. I invested in a team of people to like do most of the operational run for me. So I was like paying salaries. Like I invested many tens of thousands of dollars in trying to separate this. And I cannot describe, and I had a team that ran ads. And I'm not exaggerating, in the 2.5 years that I ran that as a completely separate entity and a separate brand, I sold fewer templates, even running ads, than I did not even talking. So I had like 45 templates or whatever on the separate business, and I had 10 on Not Your Father's Lawyer. And I sold more templates, not even talking about it over here, than even running ads and paying a team over here. And what I think I knew from the get-go that I now know for absolute certain, which is so much of the value in the templates is actually the trust that people have in me. And it's different than like cold selling it to a cold audience, that doesn't like, why is this different than the free thing I can get on Rocket Lawyer, And so only last year, actually, I just put my tail between my legs and I absorbed it all back into this business, and I dissolved that entity. And I say it was a wild failure because I invested a lot of money. I mean, if we're totally transparent, because I'm all about transparency, I think over the 2.5 years, I lost like 50 grand in the business, but it was important for me. I don't think I had to wait that long. And if I wasn't running multiple businesses, I probably would have been able to like come to that conclusion a lot faster. But it was kind of like an out of sight, out of mind. That I think that what I learned is that my brand is me, and that if I want to scale it, it has to be like under this brand, and with this level of trust. And this is still pretty painful for me, but I'm laughing about it because I pulled these over and rebranded everything back to Not Your Father's Lawyer, and I'm selling templates without marketing it. And they just like, come in the day. I just get the emails and I'm like, I don't know why I ever fought this thing. And I have decided, if the State Bar of California is listening, that I feel pretty confident that I'm not violating any ethical rules. And there's a lot of clear disclaimers. So, and I'm not the only one doing
Well,
it.
they are actually one of our listeners. Yeah,
I thought so. Yes, just the State Bar of California.
So they know.
Yeah,
exactly. As an entity. Yeah. Oh man, that's so brutal because we know. But the reason we do this little bit that we do is because so many of our listeners, and really, if I'm being totally honest, it's the three of us that need to be reminded that perfectionism is just a sham. And especially as a business owner, it's okay to have those moments of tucking your tail between your legs, because it happens to everybody. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. But
the one lesson, I've read this because I read tons of business books, but if that wasn't like a real lesson to me, that they say like to fail forward, like, and pivot fast. And I did not pivot fast. And I needed to like accept that a lot earlier, but it was kind of that, like, I don't fail. I'm going to trudge my way through this mess. And then I was like, nope, it's still a failure. And what I did do in the spirit of my planning is I was like, I'm going to give this 3 more months. And then if I can't turn it around, I'm going to call it. So I wouldn't recommend waiting so long in the future for anybody else.
Isn't that funny? We're like, plan, but then also go for it, jump and, shut it down or make the decision or whatever it might be. And that is the expertise of being a business owner, is knowing when to plan and when to stick it out and to give it time, and knowing when to just call it and time of death and move on and change course. And no one has it figured out. That is a lie. So thank you for sharing. But yeah, I love what you said about this is your brand, because that is, in my experience, something that's super scary and also so cool to realize. One, it's scary because you're like, wait, they expect what out of me? If I don't deliver, if they don't like my business, then that means they don't like me, which is just a horrible thought to try and come to terms with, for people pleasing oldest daughters as myself. But also so incredibly cool to be like, wait, people are buying this because yes, it's useful, but they're buying this one because they like and support me and trust me. People like you, Keren, and they love your brand, and what you're offering is definitely helping fill a gap. And that has got to feel pretty freaking amazing despite any tiny or perceived massive failures.
Well, thank you. I do love what I do, and I love my clients, and it's a nice little place that I'm sitting in. So
good. Well, I'm happy you feel that way, at least, because we certainly admire that about you, or you wouldn't be here. So tell us, you've told us the name of your firm and everything. Obviously, we've got your name, but tell our listeners how they can find you.
The website is notyourfatherslawyer.com. And I'm also on Instagram mostly at Not Your Father's Lawyer. And I'm on Threads. If people are on there, I'm on Threads. But
yes,
Instagram,
you're so cool.
The best place to find me. Yeah, I never did TikTok. So if by the time this goes live and there is no TikTok in the US, then don't worry about it. I'm not there.
We're telling you, visionary. Yeah, you know all the things, right? You predicted that. Love it. Okay, so social media, and obviously in our show notes we'll include links to everything. And then you mentioned this at the beginning, but let's just reiterate. How do people work with you? What's the best way?
I do offer free consultations. So I have links on my website and on Instagram if you want to set up a free consultation. Basically anything, like I said, to do with starting, forming, maintaining your business, contracts, trademarks. And then obviously I have a template shop. You can find that on my website. And I have the membership services that actually are opening up probably later this month. I guess we're in January, but by February, they will be, by the time people listen, it'll be live. So there's a membership services that you can also find on my website.
Amazing. There's truly an option for everybody, which is what I love. Small business owners, if you are feeling a little bit of pressure or a little bit of anxiety after listening to this episode, give Keren a call. She will help you and definitely not make you feel dumb or talk down to you. She'll get you on the right track in order to get your business taken care of. Keren, thanks so much for being here today. Such a pleasure.
Thank you all for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Profitability Podcast. For more business and finance content, follow us on Instagram at The Profitability Project LLC or visit our website at theprofitabilityproject.com.